When an 8-year-old girl asked Steph Curry for just $3, she had no idea she would change her life forever. What happened next left even Steph in tears. And the real reason behind this request will surprise you completely. The Tuesday afternoon sun painted the streets of Oakland with golden tones, but for Zara Williams, only 8 years old, that light couldn't warm the emptiness she felt in her stomach for 2 mornings. Walking along the cracked sidewalks of East Oakland, the girl held tight to the worn strap of her school backpack, her holey sneakers making small sounds with each step. Zara knew every corner of that path. She passed by Mr. Martinez's garage, where the smell of oil mixed with the aroma of Cuban coffee he religiously drank at 3 in the afternoon. She waved to Mrs. Rosa, who swept in front of her small grocery store, always with a warm smile that made Zara forget for a few seconds about the hunger that accompanied her. "Mija, how is your mama?" Mrs. Rosa asked, as she did every day. "She's fine, working hard," Zara replied, forcing a smile she had learned to use to protect her mother's pride. The truth was that Keisha Williams, her 28-year-old mother, left home at 5 in the morning to clean offices in downtown San Francisco, came running back at 2 in the afternoon to change clothes, and rushed to her second job as a waitress at a restaurant that operated until midnight. Between one job and another, there was barely time to breathe, let alone ensure there was always food on the table. That afternoon, Zara had left school with her stomach growling loud enough for some classmates to laugh. She pretended it was funny too, but inside, shame burned like fire. In her empty lunchbox, she carried only a water bottle she had filled at school. As she approached the Chase Center, the Golden State Warriors stadium, Zara slowed her pace. That place always fascinated her, not just because of the grandeur of the moderns, architecture that contrasted with the old constructions in the neighborhood, but because it represented a world she only saw through her neighbor's television, when she managed to watch games on nights when her mother came home earlier. It was there that men ran across a court, throwing an orange ball toward a basket, while thousands of people screamed with excitement. To Zara, that seemed magical. Not supernatural magic, but the magic of people who could make others smile just with their skill. At that moment, while observing the luxury cars parked in front of the training center, Zara saw a man of medium height, light skin, curly hair, and a smile she recognized immediately. It was Steph Curry, the player she had seen on TV making impossible shots, the same one her teacher had mentioned as an example of perseverance. Steph was on the phone, leaning against his car, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. For a moment, Zara hesitated. Her mother had always taught her not to bother strangers, but there was something about that man that seemed accessible. Maybe it was the way he smiled even while alone, or how he had waved to a janitor who had passed by moments before. With her stomach growling once more, Zara gathered all the courage an 8-year-old child can find and approached slowly. When Steph finished the call and put away his phone, she cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice came out lower than she intended. Steph turned, and when his eyes met Zara's, something happened. It wasn't pity or superficial compassion. It was the recognition of shared humanity. He crouched down slightly, getting to the girl's eye level. "Hi, how are you?" Steph asked, his voice carrying genuine kindness. Zara felt the words stuck in her throat. Up close, Steph Curry didn't seem like an unreachable celebrity. He seemed like a kind man, someone who really wanted to hear what she had to say. I was wondering," Zara swallowed hard, "if you could help me with $3? It's to buy a snack." The words came out in a thread of voice, loaded with a vulnerability that made Steph feel something tighten in his chest. It wasn't just about the $3. It was about the courage that girl had needed to gather to approach a stranger, about the dignity with which she made a request that clearly made her uncomfortable. Steph looked into Zara's eyes and saw something that instantly transported him to his own childhood in Charlotte, North Carolina. He remembered the moments when his family struggled to pay bills, when his father played in the minor leagues and money was scarce. He remembered the feeling of watching other children buy candy while he counted coins in his pocket. "Of course I can help," said Steph, but something in his heart told him that conversation shouldn't end there. "What's your name?" "Zara. Zara Williams." "Nice to meet you, Zara. I'm Steph. Were you heading home?" Zara nodded, but Steph noticed the hesitation in her eyes. There was more story there, more need than a simple snack could solve. "Zara, how about we talk a little more? I know a place nearby where they make a very good hamburger. Would you accept being my guest?" Zara's eyes lit up in a way Steph would never forget. It wasn't just about the food, it was about someone caring enough to ask, to want to know her story. While they walked through the streets of Oakland, Steph noticed how Zara greeted the neighbors, how she knew every detail of that neighborhood that was her world. And Zara, for the first time in days, felt that maybe there were people in the world willing to listen, to care, to see beyond the surface. What neither of them knew was that this casual encounter would change not only their lives, but plant seeds of transformation that would bloom throughout the Oakland community. Mike's Burgers was the kind of place that went unnoticed by those who didn't belong to the neighborhood. Small, with red plastic chairs and a counter, where Mike Thompson, a black man in his 50s, had worked for 15 years feeding the local community with honesty and homemade seasoning. When Steph and Zara entered, Mike lifted his head from the stove and did a double take. Not every day Steph Curry appeared in his establishment, but Mike was the type who treated everyone equally, from the executive in a suit to the child who came to exchange coins for a soda. "What's up, folks? What are you going to have?" Mike asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "2 complete hamburgers and 2 orders of fries," Steph replied, looking at Zara. "And what do you want to drink?" "Water is fine," Zara said quickly, a habit of someone who learned early not to ask for much. "How about a chocolate milkshake?" Steph suggested, and the smile that opened on Zara's face illuminated the entire environment. Sitting at a corner table, Steph watched Zara eat with the hunger of someone who didn't know when the next meal would be. She tried to disguise it, eating slowly, savoring each bite, but her eyes betrayed gratitude and relief. "Zara, tell me a little about yourself. Who do you live with?" "With my mother, Keisha. Just the 2 of us," Zara replied after swallowing a piece of hamburger. "She works a lot, cleans buildings in the morning and serves food at night." Steph nodded, recognizing in the girl's speech the precocious maturity of someone who grew up too quickly. "And your father?" "I never met him. My mother says some men don't know how to be fathers, but that she knows how to be mother and father at the same time." Zara spoke without bitterness, just with the acceptance of someone who learns early that life isn't always fair. "Your mother seems to be a very strong woman." "Yes, she says that one day things will get better, that she's working to give me a better life. I just wish—" Zara paused, as if she wasn't sure she should continue. "What do you wish?" "I wish she didn't have to work so much. Sometimes she comes home so tired she can barely stand. And when there's no food, she pretends she's not hungry so I can eat." The words came out in a thread of voice, loaded with pain no child should carry. Steph felt a lump in his throat. He remembered his own mother, Sonia, and how she made silent sacrifices for the family. He remembered the nights when his parents talked quietly about bills and worries, thinking the children weren't listening. You know, Zara, when I was a child, my family also went through difficult times. My father played basketball but didn't earn much money. There were nights we ate macaroni and cheese 3 times a week. Zara's eyes widened. Really? But you're famous now. Yes, but I haven't forgotten where I came from. And you know what else? My mother also worked 2 jobs sometimes. She cleaned houses during the day and gave private lessons at night. And how did you manage to get out of that situation? Steph smiled, seeing in Zara's question the same dream he had carried in childhood. With a lot of work, study, and some special people who appeared along the way to help. Sometimes, Zara, life puts people in our path at the right moment. Like you appeared in my path today? The simplicity of Zara's observation hit Steph head-on. He looked at that girl, her bright eyes full of dreams, her dignity maintained despite difficulties, her ability to see hope where others would see only problems. Zara, what kind of things do you like to do? Besides watching basketball? I like to read. At school there's a library, and the librarian, Miss Johnson, always lets me take books home. I read to my mother sometimes when she comes home very tired. And I like math, too. I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. A lawyer? Why? To help people like my mother. People who work hard but sometimes need someone who knows how to speak the language of important papers, you know? Steph remained silent for a moment, impressed with the clarity of Zara's vision of the world. At 8 years old, she already understood systemic injustices that many adults chose to ignore. Zara, you are a very special girl. Your mother must be very proud of you. She always says I'm the reason she gets up every day, that I'm her son. Zara smiled, but then her expression became worried. It's just that sometimes I get scared of disappointing her, of not being able to be as strong as she needs me to be. Those words completely broke Steph's defenses. He saw in that child not only his own childhood, but the childhood of millions of children who grow up carrying emotional responsibilities too heavy for their small shoulders. Zara, look at me, said Steph, his voice firm but gentle. You don't need to be strong all the time. You need to be a child. And your mother, she doesn't need to carry everything alone. But how? Steph already knew the answer, even before Zara finished the question. That encounter had not been coincidence. It was the universe putting in his path and opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of real people. Let me ask you a question, Zara. Would you trust me to meet your mother? I would very much like to talk to her. Zara hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. She comes home at 2:30, before going to her second job. You really want to meet her? More than anything in the world. While they finished eating, Steph was already mentally organizing how he would transform that casual encounter into something that would change that family's life forever. But first, he needed to completely understand the situation, and that meant meeting the extraordinary woman who had raised such a special daughter. The next day, Steph Curry did something he had never done in his career. He canceled a media interview to drive through the streets of East Oakland in his most discreet car, a black Honda Accord he used when he wanted to go unnoticed. He had spent the previous night researching the neighborhood where Zara lived, reading statistics about child poverty in the region, about single-parent families struggling to survive on minimum wages. The numbers were cold, but Zara's face had given warmth and humanity to those statistics. The house where Zara lived was on a narrow street, lined by small constructions that had once been colorful, but now showed the marks of time and lack of resources for maintenance. At number 1247, a faded blue house with a small porch where plants grew in plastic pots. Steph parked across the street and observed. At 2:15 in the afternoon, he saw a black woman, thin, wearing a cleaning uniform, climb the porch stairs with tired steps. Keisha Williams had arrived home. 15 minutes later, Steph rang the doorbell. Quick steps approached the door, which opened, revealing a woman with intelligent eyes and a cautious expression. "Can I help you?" Keisha asked, her voice carrying the natural distrust of someone who lives in a neighborhood where strangers at the door rarely bring good news. "Mrs. Williams, my name is Steph Curry. I met your daughter, Zara, yesterday, and she told me I could find you here." Keisha blinked several times, processing the information. "Steph Curry? The basketball player?" "Yes, ma'am. I would very much like to talk to you, if possible." At that moment, Zara appeared behind her mother, her face lighting up seeing Steph. "Mom, it's him! The man I told you about!" Keisha looked from Steph to Zara, still processing the surreal situation of having one of the world's most famous athletes standing at her door. "Please, come in," she said finally, opening the door. The interior of the house was small but impeccably clean. A living room with a sofa that had once been beige, a small television on a wooden table, photos of Zara from baby onwards scattered on the walls. It was a home built with love, despite financial limitations. "Can I offer water? It's what I have at the moment," said Keisha, shame tinting her cheeks. "Water is perfect," Steph replied, sitting on the sofa when Keisha indicated. Zara sat next to Steph, her eyes shining with excitement. Keisha brought 3 glasses of water and sat on the edge of the armchair, still tense. "Mrs. Williams, first I want to say that you have an extraordinary daughter. Yesterday, when I met her, I was impressed not only with her education, but with her maturity and kindness." Keisha smiled for the first time since Steph had arrived. "Zara is my life. Everything I do is for her." "I see that, and I also see how much you have been working hard to give her a better life. 2 jobs isn't easy, but—" Keisha stopped, as if she wasn't sure how much she should share with a stranger, even if famous. "Mom, you can trust him," Zara said softly. "He's different." Steph felt the weight of Zara's trust and knew he couldn't disappoint her. "Mrs. Williams, I grew up in a family that also struggled financially. I know what it's like to work hard and still have difficulty putting food on the table. And I know what it's like to have a mother who sacrifices everything for her children." Keisha nodded, her eyes beginning to moisten. "I would like to help you both, not as charity, but as someone who understands. Mr. Curry, I really appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept money. I have my pride." Steph had expected that response. He recognized in her the same dignity he saw in Zara. "I understand completely, and I respect that. But what if it wasn't about giving money? What if it was about opportunities?" Keisha tilted her head, curious. "Zara told me she wants to be a lawyer. How about we ensure she has all the tools to achieve that? Quality education, school materials, maybe tutoring classes? And what about you? What is your dream?" The question caught Keisha off guard. It had been so long since anyone asked about her dreams that she had almost forgotten she had them. I always wanted to work. With children. Be a teacher, maybe. But I never finished college." How about we finish that? In the following weeks, Steph worked discreetly. He arranged for Keisha's grocery bill to be paid without her knowing where the money came from. The store manager was a basketball fan and was more than happy to help, saying only that it was a community program. The electricity and water bills began arriving with zero value, explained as credits for energy savings. Zara came home one day with a bag full of school supplies, saying the school was distributing them to exemplary students. Keisha began to notice the changes, but couldn't understand where they came from. What she really noticed was how Zara seemed lighter, more smiling, how she was concentrating better at school, getting even better grades. And Steph discovered that helping Zara and Keisha had filled a void in his life that he didn't even know existed. He began researching other families in the community, talking to school principals, community leaders, understanding that Zara's story wasn't unique. It was one among hundreds. One night, after a home game, Steph called his agent. "Rich, I need to talk to you about a project." "Sure, Steph. What's it about?" "I want to create a community program in Oakland, something real that truly changes lives." "I'm listening." "An educational foundation, not just scholarships, but complete support for families, food, housing when necessary, support for parents who want to go back to school." "Steph, this is going to cost—" "I don't care how much it will cost. I care how much it will be worth." While Steph planned how to transform his inspiration into concrete action, Zara studied in her small room, dreaming of a future where she could help other families like hers. And Keisha, for the first time in years, fell asleep without worrying about what she would put on the table the next day. The seed planted by a $3 request was beginning to bloom into something much bigger than any of them could have imagined. 3 months after that encounter that changed everything, Steph Curry was nervous in a way that not even the NBA playoffs could provoke. It was a Thursday night, and the Chase Center was packed for the game against the Lakers, but his mind was focused on two special people who would be watching from the VIP suite: Zara and Keisha Williams. During these 3 months, Steph had worked silently with his team to create something revolutionary. Not just occasional help, but a complete support structure that could be replicated and expanded. In the suite, Zara had her eyes wide, seeing a basketball court for the first time from a perspective she had never imagined possible. Keisha, wearing a simple but elegant dress she had bought especially for the occasion, watched her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Mom, can you believe we're here?" Zara whispered. "No, baby. But you deserve to be here, and anywhere you dream of being." During the game, Steph played inspired. Each three-point shot seemed dedicated to them. Each assist a reminder of how small gestures can create great transformations. In the middle of the third quarter, he looked at the suite and waved discreetly. Zara waved back, her radiant smile visible even from a distance. But the real surprise would come at the end of the game. After the victory of 118 to 112, instead of the traditional post-game interview, Steph asked for a microphone at center court. "Good evening, Oakland," his voice echoed through the stadium. "Before we talk about basketball, I want to share something special with you." The crowd quieted, curious. 3 months ago, I met an incredible girl who taught me more about courage and dignity than any book could teach. This girl reminded me why I play basketball, not for trophies or statistics, but for the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. In the suite, Zara held her mother's hand, both barely able to breathe. That's why, today I'm announcing the creation of Curry's Community Champions, a program that will offer complete educational support, food, housing when necessary, and professional growth opportunities for Oakland families who are struggling to build a better future. The stadium exploded in applause, but Steph continued. This program exists because of a brave girl who taught me that $3 can be worth much more when they represent one person's willingness to trust another. Zara Williams, wherever you are, thank you for reminding me what really matters. In the suite, Zara and Keisha cried embracing, while other guests applauded emotionally. Steph had honored Zara without exposing her privacy, giving her credit without embarrassing her. After the game, in the stadium's private office, the three families met, the Currys and the Williams. "Zara," said Steph, kneeling at her height, "I want to ask an important question. Would you be willing to be the first student ambassador of our program? This means you would help other children like you, showing that it's possible to dream big." Zara looked at her mother, who nodded with tears in her eyes. "Yes, but what am I going to tell them?" "The truth, that you were already strong before meeting me, that your mother was already a heroine before any help, and that sometimes, when we extend our hand, we find other hands ready to hold ours." 6 months later, Keisha Williams had left one of her jobs and was studying pedagogy part-time, with a full scholarship from the program. She discovered that teaching small children wasn't just her dream, it was her natural gift. Zara, now 9 years old, maintained her excellent grades and had become a mentor to other children in the program. Once a week, she visited local schools telling her story, not as a victim of poverty, but as an example that dreams are valid, regardless of where we are born. The program grew rapidly. In 1 year, it was serving 50 families. In 2 years, it had been replicated in other cities. But for Steph, success was never measured by numbers. It was measured by moments like that on an ordinary Tuesday, when he stopped again in front of the Chase Center and saw Zara walking on the sidewalk, no longer with hunger or hurry, but with the confidence of someone who knows they have a place in the world. "Hey there, partner! How are you?" Steph shouted from the car. "Hi, Steph. I'm going to math tutoring class. I want to prepare for when I enter law school." Steph smiled, remembering the first time he saw her in that same place. "Zara, can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "Do you still remember what you asked me that first day?" Zara thought for a moment, then smiled mischievously. $3 for a snack. But you know what I discovered, Steph? "What?" "That you gave me much more than $3. You gave me the chance to discover that I was always worth more than I thought, and now I can teach that to other children." While Zara entered the building where the program's classes took place, Steph remained in the car for a few minutes, observing the street movement. There were other children, other families, other stories waiting to be written. He thought about the conversation he had had with his wife, Isha, the night before, about how that encounter with Zara had changed not only her life, but his too. "You know," he had said, "I thought my purpose was to be a great basketball player, but I discovered that my purpose is to use basketball as a bridge to touch lives." "And you discovered that through an 8-year-old girl?" "I discovered it through an 8-year-old girl who had the courage to believe that a stranger could care." That afternoon, while returning home, Steph received a text message from Keisha. "Steph, Zara wants to know if you can come have dinner with us on Sunday. She wants to cook for you. Nothing special, just spaghetti with meatballs. She says it's her way of paying back the $3. Steph smiled, typing the response. "Tell Zara it will be the honor of my life. And Keisha, those $3 were the best investment I ever made." Because sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest gestures. And sometimes, when a brave child asks for $3 for a snack, the universe conspires for that request to become the beginning of something much bigger than anyone could imagine. What began as always hunger became hope. What began as need became opportunity. And what began as a casual encounter between a girl and a basketball player became proof that true greatness is not measured by points scored on a court, but by the difference we make in the lives of those who cross our path. And every time Zara Williams looks in the mirror, she sees not just a girl who was once hungry, but a young woman who learned that her voice has power, that her dreams have value, and that she has the right to occupy any space she chooses to be in. This is the magic of true encounters. They transform us into better versions of who we already were inside.